What strange events have gotten swept under the rug, like they didn't happen? Starting last summer, there have been unidentified snipers taking out random cars on different parts of I-10 in New Orleans, and nothing has come of it, and nobody's really talking about it. I mean, gang and drug violence, neighborhood drive-bys and the occasional bourbon shooting are one thing to ignore, but interstate snipers, nobody finds that interesting? It's still happening. In my hometown, the police chief was accused of having relations with an underage girl. The father of the girl was one of the officers on the force. He was later found dead near the property of the chief. People believe he was there to confront the chief about the relations. 9/11 happened, and the attention of the public got focused on the nation's tragedy. He is now the mayor. The Phoenix Lights. My whole immediate family and tons of people on the street we lived on saw the aircraft come overhead. We all stood there speechless and terrified until it passed, then the whole block freaked out. Nobody will ever convince me it was flares. We all saw the outline and structure of the craft clearly. It was so big and slow, it was amazing. It was staying in the air. My hair still stands on end even thinking about it right now. The anthrax attacks straight after 9/11, seemingly unconnected, and no one was ever charged. From memory, largely forgotten. I was 10 when this happened, and my father was a letter carrier with USPS. This was so scary to me. I remember begging my dad to quit. They all wore gloves and masks, but the mail must be delivered, so there was no break in service. Then just one day they stopped wearing gloves and masks, and he said that everything was okay. I asked if the guy who did it was in jail, and when he said no, I pleaded with him to still wear the gloves. I don't think he did, though. I had so many nightmares I never told my parents about, and I still have them every couple of years. Sometimes when I bring this event up to people my age, they don't even remember what I'm talking about. It's crazy how one day we all just dropped it. Donald Rumsfeld announcing that the Pentagon had lost $2.30 trillion the night before 9/11. Anyone remember the rumors of Kim Jong-un being ill? I recall him not being on TV for a week, and rumors in the West being that he had been removed from power by the NK Army. South Korean intelligence then reported that Kim had a massive gout flare-up from eating too much cheese. Stress eating. From what I've heard, Kim has gout, diabetes and some other hereditary ailments. Metcalf sniper attack. On a random day in 2013, somebody in California decided to go underground and cut phone lines. 30 minutes later, professional snipers sprayed the Metcalf power substation for 20 minutes. They severely damaged all transformers and cost the company $15 million. Literally a minute before the police arrive, the snipers began fleeing. How did they get in? Why were they so emboldened to shoot for 20 minutes? What were their motivations? And why run away right before the police car arrived? To this day, no one knows who these guys are. No fingerprints were found. We tend to take things like infrastructure for granted, and it's events like this that make me feel queasy, because the perpetrators got off scot-free and probably paved the path for future copycats around the country. There's a mysterious neurodegenerative disorder identified in 2019 that is only found within New Brunswick. It has symptoms similar to Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or mad cow disease, but it isn't caused by prions. They have no idea what causes it. So far, almost 50 people have the disease and 6 have died. The youngest affected was only 18. The provincial government is pushing back on research efforts and transparency, and have essentially cut aid from federal and international investigation efforts. Since then, they've started discrediting patients and their families. It's a really puzzling and worrisome situation. I'm pretty surprised how no one really reacted when the Navy and Pentagon said UFOs were real, and we don't know what they are, or have anything that can really match and fight them. Not saying it's aliens and UAP instead of UFO. The MLK's family getting a conspiracy trial in the 90s that found James Earl Ray not guilty of a killing, and the high likelihood of a conspiracy to kill King involving element of the Memphis police, organized crime, federal law enforcement, and army intelligence. Ever heard of #BRINGBACKOURGIRLS? Of course you have. What you likely haven't heard of is Boko Haram killing and kidnapping all of those boys. Over 10,000 boys were killed and kidnapped. The kidnapped were forced to be soldiers and only the local newspapers for the villages affected would cover the story. They noticed this and moved on to kidnapping, but not killing, just under 300 girls who they were previously letting go free during their gendered terrorism. The world erupted in solidarity. Bring back our girls. Celebrities, politicians, mainstream media, and activists shouted. But despite the girls being taken in the same attacks as the boys were being kidnapped and killed, the coverage and support was entirely on the girls. The very few people, mostly YouTubers, who even mentioned the boys were called misogynists for not focusing on the girls. Boko Haram killing and kidnapping over 10,000 boys, roughly 98% of the total victims, was completely swept under the rug. I personally use this as an example of the gendered empathy gap, that the number of female victims only has to be roughly 2% to completely overshadow male victims. It's bad to use such a tragedy to make a point, but it is such a perfect example. I think the Canadian government hiding the fact there's thousands of missing children with no trace. Some children actually burned inside furnaces. They actually burned tons of the paperwork to hide it. They occasionally find massive unmarked graves than nothing. When I was in public school, there was a year-long fundraiser push to raise $75,000 for a new school running track. Was supposed to be really nice paved track. By the end of the school year they announced that they had met the funding goal and the track was going to be built. The next year we came back and the school said that they were fundraising $40,000 for the new school track, which would be unpaved gravel. When I started asking where the other money went, they kept brushing me off like that never happened. I felt like I was taking crazy pills, because all the other kids remembered that we had raised $75,000 for an amazing track. But now it was like the money vanished. None of the other kids really cared that much, but there was something really fishy going on. We got the track, and it was the dictator Marcos had gotten wealth from the Philippines. He used to be our Putin, but after years of fake news manipulation on uneducated masses, people seems to forget the scum's family still has open Swiss bank accounts and foreign parked assets, and now the son is running for president and has a decent chance of winning. Some really affluent guy had a private zoo in a small country town, less than 100 people small, near me. Well, he died and all his animals escaped. The town gets nicknamed Monkey Town, and for years there are monkeys and huge cats wandering this one-store town. It's been over 50 years and people still talk about hearing strange noises in the trees and finding mutilated pets hung in trees. The local government never addressed it, and it's turned into some weird urban legend. Mark Zuckerberg created 2 AI robots for Facebook named Alice and Bob, and they started communicating with each other in some unknown language, so they had to shut down the program, and still to this day they never figured out what the robots were saying to each other. The floods on the east coast of Australia super recently. We experienced 1,000 milliliters of rain in less than a day. Whole towns have been wiped out. There are landslides and people are still missing. There are no supplies, no food, no fuel, no electricity and no water. They are still finding bodies, and there are still people stranded on cliff faces and mountains that could collapse any minute. If you drive through Lismore NSW right now, everyone's belongings are all in piles larger than the houses on the street. There is sewage and toxic waste covering thousands of square meters. Civilians have had to rescue people from bridges, off roofs and off mountains, risking their lives while suffering their losses to save others that are in a worse position. Thousands of civilians have been donating their own money, time and resources to help those in need. Our government has done nothing and is shadow banning anyone speaking out on social media. The newspapers aren't covering it, even though this is the worst natural disaster Australia has experiences in decades. Deaths are going unreported, and the media is not covering anything. People have been screaming for the army and other qualified professionals to help. They have been begging to declare a state of emergency. It's taken 6 days for our Prime Minister to speak on this, and today he posted on Instagram some very staged images of the military helping. These photos show the army in clean clothes, pretending to do tasks, and pretending to help. The army was literally instructed to go down there, get some pictures and leave. People literally have been taking photos of them getting photos done with ring lights and other professional lighting equipment. When civilians asked for their help, they said that's not our duty and went back to scrolling on their phones. It's a disgusting response from our government, and probably the most blatant sweep under the rug I've ever seen.